The phone call came at 11:47 p.m., exactly 12 hours before my sister Emma's wedding was supposed to begin. I was in my penthouse office, reviewing quarterly reports for my hospitality empire when Mom's name flashed on my screen. "Sarah, we need to talk," she said without any greeting, her voice carrying that familiar tone of disappointment I'd grown accustomed to over the years. "What's wrong, Mom?" I asked, setting down my pen and giving her my full attention despite the late hour. "It's about tomorrow. The wedding." She paused and I could hear Dad's voice murmuring something in the background. "We've been thinking and we think it's best if you don't come." The words hit me like a physical blow, even though I'd half expected this conversation. 4 months, I'd watched my family plan Emma's dream wedding to her finance bro fiancé Marcus, contributing silently from the shadows while they stressed about budgets and logistics. They had no idea that the lucky break they'd gotten on the Grandview Manor venue had come from me, or that the coincidental last-minute availability had been orchestrated through my shell company. "Don't come to my own sister's wedding?" I asked quietly. "Sarah, please don't make this harder than it has to be." Mom's voice softened slightly, but her resolve remained firm. "You know how important this day is for Emma. All the photos, the memories, we just want everything to be perfect. And I would ruin that somehow?" "It's not that you'd ruin it intentionally," she said carefully. "But you know how you've been lately. The way you dress, that old car you drive, living in that tiny apartment. Emma's friends, Marcus's family, they're all very successful people. The Hendersons have a reputation to maintain." I almost laughed at the irony. If only she knew that their successful future son-in-law had pitched his startup to my venture capital firm 6 months ago. His business plan had been so fundamentally flawed that I'd rejected it in under 10 minutes. "I'm your daughter too, Mom," I said, keeping my voice steady despite the anger building in my chest. "Of course you are, sweetheart. But sometimes loving someone means making difficult choices. Emma deserves her perfect day, and honestly, having you there in your current situation, it would just raise questions we don't want to answer." "By current situation?" "You know what I mean. The unemployment, the small apartment, that beaten-up Honda you refuse to replace. Emma's wedding is going to be featured in Metropolitan Weddings magazine. We can't have you in the family photos looking like..." She trailed off, but the implication was clear. I closed my eyes and took a deep breath. For 3 years, I'd maintained this facade of struggling to make ends meet while secretly building one of the most successful hospitality empires on the West Coast. My family saw what I wanted them to see. A daughter who'd never quite found her footing after college, who worked some job in hospitality that barely paid the bills. The truth was more complicated. At 28, I owned 17 luxury venues across 3 states, including the very location where Emma's wedding was supposed to take place in less than 12 hours. My tiny apartment was actually a minimalist penthouse worth $4.2 million, and my beaten-up Honda was a conscious choice to stay under the radar while I focused on building something real. "Sarah? Are you still there?" Mom's voice pulled me back to the conversation. "I'm here. So you understand then why this is for the best." I looked out the floor-to-ceiling windows of my office, watching the city lights twinkle in the darkness. Down there, hundreds of my employees were working the night shifts at my various properties, ensuring that guests had perfect experiences. Tomorrow they would have made Emma's wedding magical too. "I understand," I said quietly. "Good. I knew you'd be reasonable about this. Maybe we can all have lunch next week, just the family, and you can see all the photos." "Maybe." "All right then. Get some sleep, sweetheart. I love you." "Love you too, Mom." I hung up and sat in the silence for a long moment, processing what had just happened. My own family had uninvited me from my sister's wedding because they were ashamed of what they thought I'd become. The funny thing was, I could have fixed their perception years ago. I could have told them about Meridian Hospitality Group, my company that they'd never connected to their youngest daughter. I could have shown them the Forbes article that had featured me as one of the 30 under 30 entrepreneurs to watch, or the industry awards lining my office walls. But I'd wanted to know who they really were beneath all the social climbing and status obsession. Now I had my answer. I pulled up the contact for James Morrison, the general manager of Grandview Manor. He'd been with my company for 2 years and had no idea that the Henderson wedding scheduled for tomorrow belonged to my own family. "Ms. Adams." James answered on the second ring, sounding alert despite the late hour. Is everything all right? James, I need you to cancel the Henderson reservation for tomorrow. Cancel? Ma'am, the wedding is in 12 hours. The deposit alone was $30,000, and they've already paid the full $180,000 for the event. We'd be looking at a lawsuit if we... The deposit and full payment will be refunded immediately. I cut him off. Cancel everything. The ceremony space, the reception hall, the catering, the flowers, the music, all of it. There was a pause. Ma'am, may I ask why? This is highly unusual and the family will be devastated. We've had our entire staff preparing for weeks. I stood and walked to the window, looking out at the city I'd helped shape with my venues and events. Let's just say there was a change of plans. Should I call the family to inform them? No. They'll figure it out when they arrive. But ma'am. James, I need you to trust me on this. Refund every penny they've paid immediately. I'll handle any legal complications that arise. Yes, ma'am. Should I reschedule the staff? We'll have 47 employees with nothing to do tomorrow. Give everyone the day off, full pay. Consider it a bonus. After I hung up, I sat back in my chair and opened my laptop. Within minutes, I'd processed the full refund to my parents' account. Money that would show up as coming from Meridian Hospitality Group. They'd probably never make the connection. Then I did something I hadn't done in months. I called my assistant Marina despite the ungodly hour. Sarah? What's wrong? Marina answered immediately, her voice sharp with concern. Nothing's wrong. I need you to do something for me. Of course. What do you need? I want you to book the penthouse suite at the Ocean View Resort for tomorrow night. And arrange for my driver to pick me up at 10 a.m. The Ocean View? That's a 6-hour drive. I know. I need to get away for a few days. Should I clear your schedule for Monday? Clear the entire week. After the arrangements were made, I tried to sleep but found myself staring at the ceiling instead. Part of me wondered if I was being too harsh. Emma didn't even know about Mom's phone call. She was probably asleep, dreaming about her perfect wedding day. But that was the problem, wasn't it? Emma had known about the family dynamics for years. She'd watched our parents slowly freeze me out of family events, had participated in the subtle exclusions and the not-so-subtle disappointments. When was the last time she'd called me just to talk? When had she last asked how I was really doing? The answer was never, because they were all too caught up in their own version of success to notice that I'd quietly surpassed every single one of their achievements. My phone buzzed at 6:23 a.m. with a text from Emma. So excited for today. Can't wait to see everyone at the venue. I stared at the message for a long time before responding. I hope your day is everything you deserve. At 7:15 my phone started ringing. It was James. Ms. Adams, I'm getting calls from vendors. The florist is here with $8,000 worth of arrangements, and the catering truck just pulled up. What should I tell them? Tell them exactly what I told you. The event is cancelled. The bride just called. She's hysterical. I felt a pang of something, guilt, sadness, regret, but pushed it aside. What did you tell her? I told her that management had to cancel due to an emergency, and that all payments would be refunded in full. She demanded to speak to the owner. What did you say to that? I said the owner was unavailable. Good. At 8:30 my phone exploded with calls and texts. First Emma, then Dad, then Mom, then Emma again. I let them all go to voicemail. The messages were predictably dramatic. Emma, Sarah, please call me back. The venue canceled our wedding. Everything is ruined. We don't know what to do. Dad, some kind of emergency at the venue. They won't tell us what happened. Can you believe this? On Emma's wedding day. Mom, the venue refunded everything but won't explain why. We're trying to find somewhere else but everywhere is booked. This is a nightmare. By 10 a.m. I was in the back of my black Mercedes heading north toward the coast. My driver Thomas caught my eye in the rearview mirror. Rough morning, Ms. Adams? You could say that. Family troubles? I'd worked with Thomas for 2 years and he'd become more than just a driver. He was discreet, professional, and had an uncanny ability to read situations. Something like that. For what it's worth, he said carefully, family can be complicated. But they usually come around when they realize what they've lost. We drove in comfortable silence for a while as I watched the familiar landscape give way to rolling hills and eventually the coastline. My phone continued to buzz with increasingly frantic messages. At 11:45, I finally listened to one of Emma's voicemails. Sarah, I don't know if you've heard, but our venue canceled this morning with no explanation. We're trying to find somewhere else, but Saturday bookings are impossible. Marcus's family is flying in from New York and we have 150 guests. I need my sister right now. Can you please call me back? The desperation in her voice almost broke my resolve. Almost. At 12:30, Dad left a message that made me pull over at a scenic overlook. Sarah, I know we haven't always. I know things have been strained between us. But Emma needs her family right now. Whatever happened at that venue, we'll figure it out. But I was hoping, maybe you could come help us look for an alternative? You work in hospitality, right? Maybe you know someone who could help on short notice. I sat in the car looking out at the Pacific Ocean and laughed until I cried. They wanted my help in hospitality. They had no idea that I could have solved their problem with a single phone call, that I owned 6 other venues within 50 miles that could have accommodated their wedding. But they'd made their choice when they decided I wasn't good enough to be in their family photos. My phone rang again. This time it was a number I didn't recognize. Hello. Is this Sarah Henderson? The voice was male, stressed. Yes. This is Marcus. Well, I guess I should say Emma's fiancé. Look, I don't know what's going on between you and your family, but Emma is falling apart right now. She needs her sister. I was quiet for a moment. Did she ask you to call me? No. She doesn't know I got your number from her phone. But I've been watching her family dynamics for the past year and I can see there's some kind of rift. Today isn't the day for family drama. You're right, I said. Today isn't the day for family drama. So you'll come help us? Marcus, can I ask you something? Sure. Why did you really want to marry into the Henderson family? There was a pause. What kind of question is that? An honest one. I've watched you for the past year. You're marrying Emma, but you spend most of your time talking to Dad about business connections and networking opportunities. You drive the car he recommended, you wear the watch he suggested, you even changed your investment strategy based on his advice. Emma's father is a successful man. I respect his opinion. His investment firm manages $30 million in assets. That's not exactly Warren Buffett territory. How do you know that? I smiled. I pay attention. Another pause. Look, Sarah, I don't know what your problem is with your family, but my problem is that none of you ever bothered to ask who I really am. What's that supposed to mean? It means I hope you find a venue for your wedding, Marcus. I really do. But I won't be attending. I hung up and turned my phone off. The next few days at the Ocean View Resort were exactly what I needed. I swam in the private pool, ate incredible food, and slowly felt the knot of anger and hurt in my chest begin to loosen. On Tuesday I finally turned my phone back on. 67 missed calls. 43 text messages. 12 voicemails. I scrolled through them slowly. Saturday afternoon. Frantic messages about the cancelled venue. Saturday evening. They'd found a local community center that could accommodate the reception. Sunday morning. Photos from the intimate wedding celebration at the community center. Emma looked beautiful but tired. The decorations were clearly last minute. Marcus looked stressed. Monday, a text from Mom. Sarah, we need to talk. Tuesday morning, a voicemail from Emma. Sarah, I know you're mad at us. I don't fully understand why, but I know something's wrong. Marcus told me he called you on Saturday. He said you asked him some weird questions about Dad's business. I want to understand what's happening with our family. I was surprised by the sincerity in Emma's voice. For the first time in years, she sounded like she genuinely wanted to connect rather than just going through the motions of sisterly obligation. I called her back. Sarah. She answered on the first ring. Hi, Emma. Oh my God, I'm so glad you called back. Where are you? Are you okay? I'm fine. I'm taking some time away to think. Think about what? I looked out at the ocean from my suite's balcony. About family. About what we mean to each other. Sarah, I'm sorry about whatever Mom said to you about the wedding. I found out yesterday that she called you Friday night. I never asked her to uninvite you. But you didn't ask her to make sure I was included either. There was silence for a moment. You're right. I should have. I was so caught up in all the planning and stress. I wasn't thinking about anyone's feelings except my own. Emma, can I ask you something? Of course. What do you think I do for work? You work in hospitality, right? At a hotel or something. That's what I told you 3 years ago when I first started. What do you think I do now? I assumed it was the same thing. Sarah, you never talk about work when we see you. When do we see each other, Emma? Another pause. We see each other at family dinners. The last family dinner I was invited to was 8 months ago. Before that, it was Christmas, where I spent 3 hours listening to Dad lecture Marcus about investment strategies and Mom showing off photos of your engagement party to the neighbors. Sarah, I didn't realize. That's the problem, Emma. None of you realize anything about my life because you've never bothered to ask. I could hear her crying softly on the other end of the line. You want to know what I really do for work? I continued. I own 17 luxury venues across California, Oregon, and Washington. My company, Meridian Hospitality Group, generated $47 million in revenue last year. The venue that canceled your wedding? That was mine. What? Grandview Manor. I own it. I own the place where you were supposed to get married. That's impossible. Is it? Have you ever asked me about my life? My goals? My dreams? Have you ever wondered how I afford to live in downtown San Francisco on a hotel worker's salary? We thought you had roommates. I live alone in a penthouse that's worth more than Dad's entire investment portfolio. I could hear her breathing heavily on the other end. Emma, I canceled your wedding venue because Mom called me at midnight and told me not to come because I would ruin your photos. Because apparently, I'm too much of an embarrassment to be seen with the Henderson family. Oh my God, Sarah. I had no idea she said that to you. But here's what really hurts, Emma. It's not that she said it. It's that none of you would have noticed if I hadn't been there. When was the last time you called me just to talk? When was the last time you asked how I was really doing? She was quiet for a long time. You're right, she finally whispered. I've been a terrible sister. You haven't been terrible. You've been absent. Is that why you canceled our venue? To punish us? I considered the question carefully. I canceled it because I realized that you all made a decision about who I am and what I'm worth without ever bothering to find out the truth. And I decided I didn't want to be part of a family that sees me as a liability. Sarah, please. I want to fix this. I want to understand who you really are. Do you? Yes. God, yes. I've been so caught up in my own life, in what Mom and Dad expected from me, in trying to impress Marcus's family. I forgot what actually matters. I felt something shift in my chest. This was the conversation I'd been waiting 3 years to have. Emma, I never wanted to hide my success from you. But I needed to know that you'd love me even if I was actually the person Mom and Dad thought I was. Of course I would love you. You're my sister. Are you sure? Because for the past 3 years, you've all treated me like I was a disappointment. Like I was someone to be managed and handled rather than included and celebrated. We thought we were being supportive. You thought you were being tolerant. I could hear her crying again. Sarah, will you come home? Can we start over? I looked out at the ocean, feeling the sun warm on my face. We'll come home, Emma. But things are going to be different. How? Well, for starters, Sunday family dinners are now at my place. And Emma? Yeah. Bring your appetite. I have an incredible chef. When I returned to San Francisco the following Saturday, I found my family waiting in my building's lobby. All of them, Mom, Dad, Emma, and even Marcus. They looked small and uncertain in the soaring marble space, clearly intimidated by the obvious wealth surrounding them. How long have you lived here? Dad asked quietly as we rode up in the private elevator to my penthouse. 2 years. And we never knew? You never asked. When the elevator doors opened directly into my living space, revealing the floor-to-ceiling windows and the million-dollar view of the bay, Mom actually gasped. Sarah, she whispered. What have we done? I looked at my family, really looked at them, for the first time in years. They weren't bad people. They were just people who'd gotten caught up in their own version of success, their own fears about social status and appearances. You made assumptions, I said simply. And I let you because I wanted to see who you really were. And? Dad asked, his voice smaller than I'd ever heard it. You're my family, I said. And family means we get to start over as many times as it takes. Emma stepped forward and wrapped her arms around me in a hug that felt more real than any interaction we'd had in years. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I'm so sorry I didn't see you. I'm sorry I didn't let myself be seen," I whispered back. Over dinner that night, prepared by my chef in the kitchen they didn't know I had, we talked more honestly than we had in years. I told them about building my business, about the long hours and the risks and the dreams that had driven me. They told me about their fears, their insecurities, their own struggles with feeling successful enough. "I want to understand your business," Dad said over dessert. "Will you teach me?" "I want to work for you," Emma said suddenly. "If you'll have me. I have a degree in event planning that I've never used because I was too busy trying to be what everyone else wanted me to be." I looked around the table at these people I'd loved and resented and missed and feared disappointing. "Sunday dinners," I said. "Every week. Here. We rebuild this family one conversation at a time." "And Emma?" "Yeah. You start Monday." As I watched my family begin to see me, really see me, for the first time I realized that sometimes the greatest success isn't building an empire. Sometimes it's building a bridge back to the people who matter most, even when they've forgotten how to cross it themselves. The wedding venue cancellation had cost them one perfect day. But it had given us something more valuable: a chance to be a real family again.